Toss aside the touchy-feely notions of love in business and recognize the real power it holds. Welcome to the Love is Just Damn Good Business podcast with host Steve Farber. Drawing on his work with a wide variety of companies from the Fortune 100 to smaller family-owned businesses, Farber shares inspiring interviews with business leaders and proven strategies for how you can create experiences that your customers will love by developing a culture that your employees, teammates, and colleagues love working in. Discover why and how love, at the end of the day, is just damn good business for you too. Here's your host, Steve Farber.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Love is Just Damn Good Business podcast. I'm your host, Steve Farber, although I guess you already knew that. What you don't know necessarily is that my guest today is Bob Chapman, who is a bit of a legend. He won't tell you that, but I will tell you that. I've been very excited to talk to Bob because of his incredible impact that he's having in the world of business and beyond. To wit, Bob was recently named the number 3 CEO in the world in an Inc. magazine article. And as the CEO, he's very intentional about using his platform as chairman and CEO of Barry-Wehmiller to build a better world. Now, Barry-Wehmiller, the company, is a $3+ billion capital equipment and engineering consulting firm. They've got more than 12,000 team members around the world. And Bob became the senior executive of the organization in 1975 at age 30. And at the time, the company was a 90-year-old business, had $20 million in revenue, had outdated technology, and as they describe it, let's say a weak financial position. Bob took on those obstacles, overcome those obstacles by overcame those obstacles. I like inventing new words. By applying a unique blend of strategy and culture. And since then, he's led Barry-Wehmiller through more than 115 successful acquisitions. And over the past couple of decades, he's been through a series of, let's call them realizations, which led him away from so-called traditional management practices to a very people-oriented, people-centric style, which he calls truly human leadership. And he's written about his experience in a much acclaimed book called Everybody Matters: The Extraordinary Power of Caring for Your People Like Family. And I think that's a pretty good tee-up for our conversation. Bob, thanks so much for being here. Welcome to the podcast.
It's a joy to have this opportunity to share the message with you. And each time I have a chance to do this, I think we reach more people in the world so we can start healing the very brokenness we're feeling in the world through leadership.
So let's start with that. I mean, I want to hear how this so-called series of realizations. What was that all about? I want to hear that in a second. But let's start with what you just said, because we live in a world that is pretty obvious to say deeply divided, fraught with peril. We've just been through, and they're still going through this pandemic. And people if you read the articles on the news, watch the news on cable, whatever it is, you get this picture of the world that says there is just no way out of this mess. But yet, you have created something at Barry-Wehmiller that characterizes to me what the world should be like. So when you say it's a great opportunity to bring this message to change the world, you're not just talking about the world of business, are you?
No, because leadership is part of I speak in all parts of our society, from healthcare to nonprofit, to the military, to government, to business, to universities. And I see the brokenness in every part of our society and the impact it makes. I'll remind you, before the pandemic, we had in our country, in America, the lowest unemployment in 50 years, a strong stock market, a vibrant economy. So we had peace and prosperity. Yet we had one of the highest levels of anxiety and depression we've ever had. Why? We had peace and prosperity. Families could vacation, improve their living, send their kids to school. Why would we have anxiety and depression? Because we created the prosperity at the expense of human dignity. So as Tom Friedman capstoned it about 6 months ago in an article in the New York Times, we don't have a poverty of money in this country. We have a poverty of dignity.
Yeah.
And when people don't feel valued, they don't feel dignity, you feel a sense of humiliation, you'll see anger and unrest like you've never seen before. So in my humble opinion, what the world suffers from is the word management. Okay. In my education, I took management classes, got a management degree, and got a job in management. So what did I try and do? I tried to manage people. Okay. That was the first half of my career. I'm smarter than you. I've got a position of authority, and I'm going to tell you what to do. And people did it, and I felt good about it. Okay. That characterized the first half of my career. Okay.
So did that start when you took over at age 30 or even before
No,
that?
I was doing that from out of college because that's what I was taught. Okay.
Right.
And now I define the word. I hate the word management. I hate the word supervisor. I hate the word boss. I love coaches, mentors, and leaders. Okay. What does the word management mean? It means the manipulation of others for your success.
Yeah, it's the handling of things.
Okay. And what does leadership mean? Leadership is the stewardship of the lives entrusted to you. Profound difference. So what we are suffering from in this world is leadership malpractice. Okay. We are self-destructing for economic gain because we have never learned that human dignity and economic gain can be in harmony. Okay. They're not in disharmony. So that is kind of the summary of what I've come to, that we have not taught people how to care. We've taught people how to use others for your success, which is called a mecentric world,
right, as
opposed to a we-centric world.
So it may be obvious to say that when you talk to the typical person on the street, as it were, and ask them to describe their experience at work, they'll say a lot of things. They'll say, well, they may or may not like the work that they're doing. It's where they go to make their money. But very few people, I think, will just kind of naturally say, I go to work to feel dignified. I go to work for people to treat me with great respect and care and to listen to my needs. That's not how we describe what the work experience is, typically.
Well, when my granddaughter graduated from Aspen High School 4 years ago, and I was in the Aspen Music Tent for the graduation event, as each freshman child walked up to get their diploma in high school, the family members, friends were screaming and yelling with joy as they got their diploma. As my granddaughter walked up to get her diploma, I started crying because I knew the world we were sending these kids into. Okay. And these statistics, this world that I know exists, are startling. 88% of all people in this country feel they work for an organization that does not care about them.
Right.
3 out of 4 people in this country are disengaged in what they're doing. 65% of people would give up a salary increase if they could fire their boss. There's a 20% increase in heart attacks on Monday mornings when people have to go back to work, okay? And when I talk to CEOs, I say, you're worried about the cost of healthcare? You are the problem. 74% of all illnesses are chronic. The biggest cause of chronic illness is stress, and the biggest cause of stress is work. We are self-destructing for economic gain. And we are pressured to create that economic gain because that's how we measure success: money, power, and position. Okay. And it doesn't matter how you get it as long as you've got it. Okay. So I always tell executives, your greatest act of charity is not the money you give to the United Way or the Heart Association or the Cancer Society. Your greatest act of charity in this world is how you treat the people you have the privilege of leading.
So shouldn't that be obvious by now? I mean, every mission statement, virtually every mission statement of every company on the planet has some variation on the theme of people are our most important, whatever label they want to give it, and something along the lines of we treat people with dignity and respect, right? But yet, those are the words.
Yeah,
but that's
just there. So the statistics have given you. This is not an American issue. We operate all over the world. It is a global issue. Okay. Even in France, where we have tremendous government intervention to try and protect workers from management, when I was buying a company in France from a prominent French company, I flew over there to the workers' councils to hear, because they have to agree that we acquire their company. So here's an ugly American flying over to buy a company in France from a prominent French company. So the workers' councils, I meet with them, 6 men and women, and they say, Mr. Chapman, we went up to Paris to study your culture. We met with the workers' councils. We read your values. And we want you to buy our company. And I felt a surge of pride as an American that they had studied our culture and wanted to be part of it. Then a gentleman sitting next to the chairman of the workers' councils, again, picture yourself being me, across the table from these 6 fine men and women of this French workers' council. The gentleman sitting next to the chairman said, Mr. Chapman, could I say something? He said, sure. And he said, Mr. Chapman, we've been waiting for you for 32 years. And they began crying. Because the government can't protect your soul. Okay? It can't validate your worth. There's no law you could pass that would validate the worth of an individual. But truly human leadership sees everybody not as an engineer, an accountant, a production worker, an hourly worker, a salary worker. Truly human leadership sees everybody you have the privilege of leading as somebody's precious child. Knowing as we do now that the way you treat that precious child who's in your care for 40 hours a week is going to profoundly affect their health, more so than their family doctor, and profoundly affect the way they go home and treat their spouse and their children. So when we look at the issues we face today in our society, the problems with kids, what's wrong with kids today? Where did those kids grow up? They grew up in our families, okay? Mm-hmm. They grew up with parents who probably had a job where they were manipulated and used and discarded when they weren't needed. And they came home not very present to be loving parents, loving spouse. And so the issue we face in this world is that the Industrial Revolution was all about economic gain. And we thought, as it raised the standard of living and we had better education, better housing, that it was good for everybody. But unfortunately, we forgot one thing in that equation in the Industrial Revolution, which is to teach people who had the privilege of leading people in these factories and offices how to care about them. That is the problem. And I was interviewed by a university not too long ago from their organizational development professors. And after an hour-and-a-half interview, they said to me, Mr. Chapman, you're the first CEO we have ever interviewed that never talked about your product. And I said, we've been talking about our product for the last hour and a half. It's our people. Yeah. I will not go to my grave proud of the machinery we build in our company. I will go to my grave proud of the people who designed and built that machinery. Our product is our people.
So there's something underlying all of that I think belies a delusion that we've all bought into, which is that the economic success, monetary success, and the people side of the equation are somehow either or even mutually exclusive, that you have to focus on one or the other. It's either going to be, we're going to focus on the money or we're going to focus on the people. And what folks haven't quite, when I say folks, I mean in general, as the norm, haven't quite figured out yet is that they are intimately connected. That you focus on the people and the money, and that helps the bottom line.
Let me, again, stories tell a lot. Harvard wrote a case study on our culture about 5 years ago. And about 4 years ago, it was introduced to a global group of leaders, average age 48 from 80 countries around the world. They were in for some extended leadership development, advanced education. And they picked our brand new case study. So they invited me up to sit in on the class. So these executives from around the world studied our culture and our business through the case study for hours before the class, came in the classroom, discussed it. Finally, the professor, Jan Rifkin, the chair of the MBA program, said, I'm going to ask you all a question now. Is Barry-Wehmiller successful because of its strategy or its culture? A little debate, then they voted. 75% of the people voted it was because of our culture. Our share price has gone up 14% a year compounded for 25 years. Now, we're a privately held company, but we have a market simulated share price. So it's a fair judge. Right. And we have transactions. So, and then the professor asked me to come up and react to that. Well, I'd never heard people discuss that. So I kind of went up with an open mind. And I said to the group, I understand why you all feel we are successful because of our strategy, but that is not the case. Okay. What we have is a robust, well-designed business model, okay, that was creating value well before we were awakened to this cultural journey that we've had. But let me give you an analogy. When Ferrari designs a high-performance engine, the perfect high-performance engine, if you don't put the premium fuel in that engine so it can run to its potential, it will never realize its potential. So our business model, our strategy is the engine. The culture is what brings that alive and create value. My statement is we are trying to validate, we have validated that you can create human value and economic value in harmony. They are not in disharmony. If my statistic I told you earlier is correct, where 3 out of 4 people in this country are disengaged in what they're doing, it only makes sense that if you could get people to bring their full gifts to work, that we could perform at much higher levels and create much more economic value and human value, okay? Right. The problem is, though, but we've been on this journey for about 17 years. It's not that it's bad people, okay? It's a bad system. It was a system built on the assumption that peace and prosperity were the essence of our government's goal. And our education system was originally designed to have an informed citizenry, but the Industrial Revolution said we need skills. We need engineers, accountants, lawyers, marketing specialists, et cetera, production engineers. And so our universities became skills factories to feed what the market wanted, not what the market needed, but what the market wanted. And so our universities went on, got good raw material, best students they could, processed them through the system, and then sold them to the market for the highest price possible. And they were successful if the demand was great. So what we gave the market is what they want and what they needed. When were unions formed? In the very time of the Industrial Revolution, to protect the greed created by the huge wealth created. But the underlying assumption of our government and of people is if we create economic prosperity, we will have happiness. Yet Gallup did a survey of 155 countries for the source of happiness. And they said the number one source of happiness in the world is not wealth, is not health, but a good job doing meaningful work with people you enjoy. So what do we deny to 88% of the people? We deny happiness, okay? And that manifests itself in broken marriages. Broken marriages impact the children raised in those families. It impacts their behavior out in our society. So to me, what we've been doing through our Leadership Institute, trying to help companies learn to care who believe what we believe, we are treating cancer, but we're not curing cancer. The cure for cancer, which we're now focused on, the vaccine, is leaders who have the skills and the courage to care. It is a teachable skill. And in our university, internal university, when we started from scratch 15 years ago to convert managers into leaders, we taught 3 simple skills. The most powerful skill of leadership is empathetic listening. It's the greatest act of caring. Recognition and celebration. How do you let people know in thoughtful, timely ways, appropriate ways that they matter? And culture of service, seizing the opportunity to serve others. So we began to do that, and we saw a transformation in our environment. from simply economic gain to human gain. And people from around the world, as you know, start coming into our operations from McKinsey, from Harvard, from Stanford, Simon Sinek, and they said, I have never seen anything like this. Even Bill Urey of Harvard said, I saw the answer to world peace. I said, how could you possibly see the answer to world peace in our manufacturing operation? He said, I saw a place where people genuinely care for each other.
So you are a self-described product of the system that you just laid out. You went through school, you learned the skills to be a manager, you learned the skills to be an accountant, you started to take on management responsibilities at the company. You worked your way up to the senior position at the company, all under that training. But there was a shift that happened for you personally at some point. Was it something? Was it some event? Was it a series of events? Was it the proverbial journey? Tell us that story, if you would.
I describe them as 3 revelations, okay? And that's the only way I can explain them, because when you hear them, you'll understand what I mean. First one was in 1997. We were starting to acquire companies, and each one was critical to our success. And we bought a company in South Carolina, about a $55 million company. And I flew down there to be there the first day we owned it. So I walked in to get a cup of coffee before the office opened. And it was March of 97. And what did people do in March? They have March Madness, office pools. So I wasn't into that, but and I didn't know anybody. They didn't know me. I was just somebody having a cup of coffee in the lunchroom. So I just kind of watched people, and these people were having fun talking about the outcome of the basketball games, who's going to go to the Final Four. And they were having fun. The closer it got to 8 o'clock when the office opened, you could just see the fun go out of their body. I didn't know I was having this experience at the time. I was just watching people bet on basketball, but I've gone retroactively put this back together. What I observed was people having fun. So I walked into my first meeting was with our customer service team. It was a meaningful part of that business. I wanted to get my hands on and see what level of customer service we're providing. But with no experience, I had no agenda other than just meet with them. I sat, because of what I just experienced in lunchroom, out of me popped, and that's the only way I need to describe it. No forethought, no experience, no intention. I said, we're going to play a game. And it's, what do you mean? I said, whoever sells the most each week will win $100. And if the team makes the team goal, they'll win $100. And they said, oh, no, Mr. Chapman. They had 21 reasons why that wouldn't work. And for some reason, I had 21 reasons why it would work. And so my only goal was to have fun. When do people express their gifts? When they're having fun. So what happened? So I came back serious, but by the end of the quarter, revenue was up by 20%, but joy was up by 1,000%. People were having fun because those people knew every day exactly the score of the game. They knew who was winning. They knew the team was doing, who had the most points, and they had fun. They were texting each other each night. And so I interviewed them afterwards. And I said, what happened? How could it grow? And I said, Mr. Chapman, I always thought I was nice to the customer, but now I'm really nice because I want to win. Okay. So, that opened my mind to thoughts I had never been educated, never been exposed to in my 20-year career. And I was profoundly touched. The second event is I was at church with my wife, and my mentor was the rector of our church, and he gives powerful sermons to help me live a more purposeful life. And one day I was sitting there and the sermon was over and getting ready to leave. And I looked at my wife, Cynthia, and I said, Cynthia, Ed only has us for 1 hour a week. We have people for 40 hours a week. We are 40 times more powerful than the church to impact people's lives. And as I walked out of that church that day, I had this thought: business could be the most powerful force for good in the world if we simply cared for the people we had the privilege of leading. That was number 2. Number 3, the one people remember the most, that I can't believe the way these developed. But number 3, I was at a wedding. Many of you have been there. A friend of mine's daughter was getting married. He was walking her down the aisle, and everybody's oohing and ahhing how beautiful she looked, how proud he was, how precious this young man was at the altar. And all of a sudden, my mind again goes to a totally different place. And I said, oh my God, all 12,000 people who work for us around the world are just like that young man and young lady. They're somebody's precious child who those parents of those children simply wanted them to live a life of meaning and purpose so they could be who they intended to be. And we have the power to give their life meaning and purpose. And so that day, I stopped looking at people as a function for my success. And I completely turned it around and said, I will have a profound impact on the lives of the people, in this case, 12,000 people. And when you see them as somebody's precious child, not as a function for your success that you use for your success, it changes everything, okay? The way you view things, the way you choose the words. And that day I realized that we needed to take these revelations and begin teaching people how to care for those they had the privilege of leading. The beauty is we started with a clean sheet of paper and we taught human skills. And the 3 skills we ended up teaching to transform managers into leaders was empathetic listening, recognition, celebration, and culture of service. So I cannot believe how this happened to me. I was doing very well as a traditional manager focused on profitability, growth, and those fundamentals of value, which is the way we teach. It's all about that. But
I wonder if there was an unspoken revelation that came along with those 3 beautiful ones that you had, because there is, or let me frame that up a different way. One thing I didn't hear you say in any one of those is, and man, if we could show everybody that we care, think of how much more money we'll make. And man, if we could, treat everybody with that knowledge that everybody is somebody's precious child, think of what that'll do to our bottom line. Did you have that thought at all anywhere in that equation?
I've never had anybody say that to me, what you just said. Never occurred to me that it would create more wealth or value. It was a revelation. Again, Simon Sinek and I talk all the time, parenting and leadership is identical. Again, a lot of what I was learning in the same period, the same arc of transformations, I was trying to be a father of 6 kids and a decent husband. And I was learning how to do that. And what I realize now, what I realize in this journey is parenting and leadership is identical. What's parenting? The stewardship of these precious lives that come into our life through birth, adoption, or second marriage, okay? Yeah. Which everybody takes very seriously. What is leadership? The stewardship of these precious lives of people who walk in our building around the world who simply want to know that who they are and what they do matters. We were already doing very well. This was not putting premium fuel in the engine. This was a sense of awareness of the way we were called to live and work together, where we genuinely care for each other.
Yeah.
There's no economic model in this whatsoever.
Right. It's interesting that, the parenting parallel, because in the same way that you didn't ask the monetary question along with these revelations. And by the way, I think that other revelation was that doesn't matter. Yeah. Right. But as a parent, at least for healthy parents, we don't, because, I've raised, let's just say more than a couple myself. I don't remember ever saying, I really want to make sure that my kids have the best opportunities and feel safe and trust me and feel, because someday these little bastards are going to grow up and take care of me, and the payoff will come, when that happens. That's why I'm doing this. That never occurred to me. That doesn't occur to most we don't do it for that reason. We do it for, and that's the word that we like to use around these parts, is it's love. It's love. Love doesn't need a further justification. It's just, it's just something that we should be doing for each other.
I would say to you from when we first met today that the words we choose are really important to me in that message. I purposefully have found my way to the word care for others. Okay. I think love's a pretty special word. Okay. Yeah. Describing a special feeling with a special individual. And so I say, I simply care for my children. And that does not mean being nice. It means doing the right thing for them so they can grow up and be who they're intended to be and appreciated for whatever it is. So when you care, and so the words we choose are extremely important. And so our truly human leadership is about caring for the people you have the privilege of leading. Okay. I'll tell you, Simon Sinek has a phenomenal quote that you'll like. In the military, we honor those who give of themselves in service of others. In business, we give bonuses to people who sacrifice others in service of themselves. Okay. Simon, after he says that, says, if in the military, officers eat last, which means we teach our military leaders their primary responsibility is the men and women in their care, why can't we in business teach our leaders their primary responsibility is the men and women in their care? Never occurred to us, okay? Because our universities teach technical skills because the market wants technical skills, okay? We don't teach human skills. We don't teach. And so what we got is we have a out of balance system, which is all, money is happiness. So as long as you get money, it doesn't matter. And in fact, happiness is not the source. Money is not the source of happiness. Okay. And so I would say to you that this revelation we had that led to how do we care for others? Okay. I have given this speech all over the world to every part of our society. And I see the brokenness, not just in business. I see it in our universities. I see it in our healthcare system. I see it in our education system. We have not taught leaders to care. We have hospital administrators. We have school principals. We don't have leaders. They're not bad people. And even in our church, I say, you can't say to people, go forth in the world and live as God intended you to live. Great. Could you give me a little clue on what that looks like? Okay. So I'm saying we can't ask people to care for others. We can't demand they care for others. We have to teach people how to care for others. It is a teachable skill that when you do this, grown men and women sob. When we created our leadership development program, where we transform managers into leaders through our education program, we had no intention, had no idea we would touch people's souls when we taught that. But the amount of emotions that people express when we take them from management, which is manipulation, to leadership, which is caring, is unbelievable. And the older you are, the more you will have emotion because the more people you've hurt in your journey unintentionally. Okay. Right. So the brokenness we feel in the world is number one, because we have not taught people how to care. Yeah. And it can't come from our parents because they weren't taught. Okay. Our church tells it, to live as God intended, but they don't tell you how. So we have this, again, I was invited into the school one time because they wanted to embrace our leadership principles. And they took me to a class to experience. And it happened to be a debate class. And after I said, Mr. Chapman, we welcome your thoughts. So I watched 4 young men, brilliant young men, debate a subject that they were going to go to Chicago in competition. And the teacher at the end of the debate said, Mr. Chapman, what are your reaction? I said, I just saw what's wrong with the world. He said, what? I said, yes, they're future senators, congressmen, governors, mayors. I'm right and you're wrong. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Not help me understand how you feel. Okay. Not listen. So we have failed to give our population, our citizenry, the fundamental skills to live together in harmony. Okay. And so the economic model that was felt to create prosperity and happiness is actually amplified the brokenness. Okay. At least farmers working in their crops had a sense of dignity. So the issue we face in this world is that we have a model built upon economic prosperity, not human prosperity. Okay. Yeah. And we can only achieve human prosperity when we learn the skills of caring. And it starts with listening to understand, not listening to judge.
So that's the work that you guys did originally, was to say, all right, if we want to create that kind of culture of caring for each other, what should that look like, right? How should people act towards each other? And then let's teach them how to do that. So the empathetic listening, for example.
Yes.
And then you started to teach that as a skill. So it's not I'm paraphrasing what you just said. It's not a philosophy. It's not be good to each other.
Yeah.
It's take these steps. I mean, part of it is philosophical in the sense that for many people, like, for example, the older managers who you're describing, it's a shift in perspective, from what I thought I was supposed to be doing to what I really should be doing, which is caring for people. And the remorse that can come along with that for thinking about how many people I've damaged over the years, that's a shift in perspective. But then now that I have that perspective, what are the steps that I need to take? And the other thing that occurs to me, Bob, is, we, when I go around the world in my talks and whatnot, and we get into the discussion about what it means to change the world for the better, I never get any disagreement on the value in doing so, right? And you think it's a good idea to change the world? Nah, I think we should just leave it the way it is. That's fine, thank you. So everybody nods their heads in agreement. The question is, what do we do about it? And I think that what you're demonstrating with your company and the people that you're influencing is you're giving us a place to start. And the way that I like to describe it is the small W world versus the capital W world. I can change the world of my company, for example, and through that, I can create a model. I can create an example for what the world at large could possibly be, versus saying, well, I can't change the world at large because that's just too big. I'm not a politician. I don't have influence. I don't have connections. I don't have that. But I can change the dynamics on my team. I can change the dynamics in my company, and then be able to say to the rest of the world, like what you're doing, look what we're doing here. And then through that, we can teach them how to do it, right?
Yeah, I mean, remember, those revelations happened. It wasn't I read a book. It wasn't we brought in a consultant. It wasn't that we hired some organizational leader that brought these ideas. The revelations awakened us in the way they fed to each other. And then again, one day, a young man who worked for part of our organizational development team said to me what nobody else would say. He said, "What is your greatest concern?" Now, I'm an eternal optimist. Okay, so I had to think a minute, and I said, my greatest concern is that we've been blessed with a leadership model that could heal the world, and it would die with me. Mm. So we got up after that dinner, and the next morning I said, okay, you've awakened in me something I didn't even know I was worried about. And because I've seen many organizations fail when the founder of those principles leaves the earth. Okay,
every day.
Many times, yeah. Every day. And I said, okay, what do religions do to live over time? They articulate their beliefs, which we have in the guiding principle of leadership, and they tell stories. Disciples tell stories that bring those beliefs to life. Okay. And so I said, how are we going to create disciples? We need to create a university where we teach people how to care so they believe it. It's not Bob's thoughts. Bob was just the vehicle this came through. This is the way I want to live my life, caring for others, being a steward of those lives. So we're fortunate to have our own jet. And if you get close to aviation when you have your own jet, you realize that before you walk on a plane, the pilots have been through the rigor of a checklist. They take nothing for granted. And they double check everything before you walk on that plane. So what we decided, I said, why don't we create the leadership checklist? Okay, that is founded on a principle. So as a leader, what do you need to think about every day to ensure that the safety of those people who have entrusted their lives to you is going to be solid? So that's how it began. And I was astounded that the first class that this team I put together wanted to teach was empathetic listening, because I said, why do we need to teach adults to listen? We know how to listen. And they said, Bob, we're going to teach it. And so they overrode me and they began teaching. And like 6 months later, I was in Minneapolis. And a young lady in her 30s came up to me and said, Mr. Chapman, I just took your listening class at university. And I said, really? What was it like? I had no idea. She said, it changed my life. And I said, wait, we taught a class at work that changed your life? And she said, yes, I now know how to raise my 2-year-old daughter. So that brought my emotions and my intellectual curiosity up to a hyper level. And I began traveling around the country, sitting down with groups of people that took these classes. And the stories I heard broke my heart and gave me profound hope, okay? That we had been blessed with something that could heal the world through the power that we have in business to influence people's lives. And it is astounding. And so 95% of the feedback we get from the people who go through this educational journey is not about running a better accounting department, a sales department, or being a better foreman or a better second shift team leader. It's about how it affects their marriage and their relationship with their kids. Because where did these principles come from? Heavily influenced by Cynthia and I raising 6 kids and trying to be a good steward of kids. So the harmony between leadership and parenting, the learnings of recognition and celebration, empathetic listening. And so now we've been on this journey for 15 years. And so what we're trying to be now is not a theory, an intellectual theory that is validated by scientific studies, but just a living example of caring.
Right.
That you can create human and economic value. Matter of fact, it makes sense that if you engage people's heads and hearts, that you will get gifts that you never imagined. Remember, there's an expression, we paid people for their hands for years, and they would have given us their heads and their hearts for free if we had just known how to ask them. And what our leadership principles do is give you the gift to ask people for their heads and their hearts, not for their individual success, but for the team member to the right and left of them, who they care about. Okay. Yeah. So organizational success.
Yeah. I let me, if I may, just offer a little observation about your journey. As you started out that beautiful passage there about, you didn't learn this stuff in a class. You didn't learn this from organizational development people. You didn't learn this stuff from a seminar. It came from your personal experience, right?
Yeah, the revelations, as I said.
Yeah. Okay, so let's just start with that. That is where it started for you. You had these revelations because, and you tell me if I'm wrong, because you were awake and paying attention, and not just having an experience, but reflecting on the experiences you were having it. Why are these people why are they having fun before work, and then that fun gets sucked out of them when the work starts? Well, why does 1 hour in church have this impact on us, and we have people for 40 hours? Why aren't we treating everybody with the same way that this person getting married is, the feelings that their parents have for them? Why? You're asking questions and then saying, well, why can't, or why shouldn't, or why wouldn't we do that in the way that we run our business? That's a profound thing, Bob, the fact that you asked those questions, but then you took it to the next step, which is, I'm not just going to assume that everybody's going to have similar revelations and come to the same conclusions. I got to share those insights with other people and teach them how to do it, which led to your university, which led to people coming up to you and saying that that training changed my life, which never would have happened if you had any one of those experiences and instead said, oh, that's interesting. Right? So even though you didn't learn this stuff from a seminar, other people can, because otherwise we just rely on them to have their own experience and derive meaning from it in a way that's going to benefit everybody else. And just one other thing, in that third skill that you teach about, coming from a culture of service, that to me is a big part of what service is. It's not enough for me to have the insight. The service comes from my sharing that insight with other people so they can also benefit from it.
Yeah, I think when I go back and I replay and try and rebuild each of those revelations, and I call them revelations because they're transformative. I didn't read a book. Nobody taught me. Nobody challenged me. I wasn't addressing a problem. We were doing very well at the time. But how could I possibly walk from having a cup of coffee with people I didn't know, watching them watch March Madness, and come up with a game we would play that they had 21 reasons why it wouldn't work, and I had 21 reasons why it wouldn't. I never done before, never thought about it, and it didn't have 1 ounce of pre-thought. How? And then when you see how it impacted their joy, their sense of team, I mean, it was unbelievable. I mean, it's just, the stories would blow your mind in terms of what it felt like. Because those people had an individual component and a team component. So when they did well, they knew they're helping the team and they coached the team. And so to me, what it was it was some gift that somebody gave me, this thought. I mean, I would say to you, if we did an intelligence test, I would come out with a very average intelligence. Okay. I had a very average educational experience. But what I'm long on is positive attitude and creativity. Okay. Mm-hmm. And so I think my heart and my mind was open to that awakening. Okay. That's the only, and that somebody was using us to show, because it was unbelievable what happened with that organization after we did that. And then we tried it in other areas, and then we paused and said, what are we learning here? We're learning how to be leaders. Okay. And so the only thing I can say is that spend 15 years in this journey, and everything we've done has validated those 3 fundamental transformational events have shown that we can create human value and economic value. They are in harmony. They are not in disharmony. And when I see and feel the brokenness, right now, I gave a talk at universities, to university presidents about 1.5 years ago. And I said, what is on the minds of the university presidents? And they said, we have an epidemic of anguish. Mm-hmm. We have the highest level of depression and anxiety ever in incoming students to American universities. Why? Well, is it the social media? Is it the phone? Or is it the family unit they came from? Okay, where the mother and father are not treated with respect and dignity. And remember, the other thing I just add into this, when I stand and look at the world, I'm a very positive person. I tend to see things in a positive way. If you turn on any media outlet right now, they are amplifying the fringes of our disharmony in this world, looking for radical voices to show the radical differences in views. So it's hard to feel good about the world when everybody is being investigated, everybody's being questioned, and I always use the example, I said it to Judy Woodruff when I was out in Aspen at a dialogue with her, is good news news? So that's a good question.
That's a great question.
Okay. Yeah. And we know in raising kids and running companies, if we don't focus on 5 positive things before we focus on one thing of improvement, it will be difficult for that person. Okay.
Right.
We have a media today that inundates us with the brokenness of the world. and we're divided by issues instead of united in purpose. So the very people we lead go home every night from a stressful situation at work, which is all about economics and making your boss look good, to a media that talks about, don't go to a shopping mall, you could get shot. Don't go to my movie theater, you could get shot. Don't go to the neighborhood. And the policeman you see, he can shoot you. So we have this media that amplifies the brokenness of the world. How do people feel good in this world that we have right now? I feel great because I believe there's profound hope in the human potential, that I believe that we have proven that you can care for people. It's a skill. It's a skill that is teachable and profound. And so my hope is, and the mountains as tall as you provide, to share this message with people who can hear it and help join us and create a movement to create a caring world where people genuinely are cared for who they are and what they do. And we have the skill to send them home each night feeling good so they can treat their spouse, raise their kids, and behave in their community as they've been treated.
Beautiful. And that is, I can't think of a better place for us to bring our conversation in for a landing. Bob, I just want to say what a great inspiration you are, your company is, your story is. And I'm very grateful that you took the time to share that with us today. And the best way for people to get a hold of you is what? And we'll be sure to put all this in the post in the show notes.
I always say, people say, how can I follow on in this? Well, first of all, everything I said is on YouTube. And there must be 30 or 40 of these talks I've given around the world on YouTube. We have the Chapman & Co. Leadership Institute, where we have programs where people can sign up to come along. We're looking for people who believe what we believe and want to join us on this journey to create a world where everybody matters, which is the intent of the creators of this world, okay? Where we stop using people for our gain, but we start seeing people in the way we can bring them to their full potential, and that leaders eat last. Our primary responsibility is the men and women in our care. It is a teachable, replicable skill that could heal the brokenness we're trying to fix. So thank you for this platform to discuss it. I feel profoundly called to share it with every opportunity I can. And the beauty is that a movement is developing. We're working with universities now and schools to bring this to as young a group as we can. So from the very earliest age, people learn the skills of caring.
Beautiful.
Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Bob. And thanks for tuning in, everybody. Until next time, do what you love in the service of people who love what you do.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Love is Just Damn Good Business with Steve Farber. Join us again next time, because when customer and employee satisfaction just isn't enough anymore, we are here to back you up with specific ideas to operationalize love to make an enormous difference in your business, personal life, and the world around you. Visit our website at stevefarber.com to leave a review. And don't forget to share the love with your colleagues and friends, because after all, it's just damn good business.